Imagine that everything you believed about living close to your children in old age is wrong. Yes, that dream of being surrounded by family, so idealized, might be the biggest mistake of your life. The Stoic Vikings, masters of mental resilience and Nordic wisdom, would never make such an error. While you think that living near your children will bring security and happiness, they knew that it could erode your inner strength and destroy your independence. What did they understand that you have yet to discover? The truth is that many, like you, find themselves drawn into the idea that family proximity in old age is a gift. But what they don't tell you is the hidden cost, the gradual loss of your autonomy and identity. The Nordic warriors understood that preserving their freedom was the key to a happy and fulfilling old age. And today, you can learn the same powerful secret they used to maintain mental strength and courage intact. Prepare to discover why true happiness in old age lies, in fact, in stepping back. Don Manuel, like many seniors, believed that living close to his children would bring him more peace in his twilight years. After all, who wouldn't want the security of having family nearby? However, he soon realized that this proximity was affecting his independence. When the Nordic warriors grew old, they rarely lived close to their children, preferring to maintain their Viking inner strength, preserving their mental resilience until the end of their lives. This reflects the ancestral wisdom of the Vikings, who valued personal autonomy as a pillar of happiness. Even with good intentions, living too close to one's children can result in harmful emotional dependency. Viking Stoicism teaches us that true happiness does not come from relying on others, but from finding one's own inner strength. Imagine a Viking warrior, strong and resilient, living near his tribe but maintaining his sacred individual space. Just like Don Manuel, who initially believed he was making the right choice, many seniors fall into the trap of sacrificing their autonomy in the name of family closeness. Viking philosophy reveals that Stoic self-control and the ability to overcome challenges are easier to cultivate when we maintain a certain distance from our loved ones, balancing affection and independence. Don Manuel began to notice that by living so close to his daughter, small family responsibilities started to accumulate. This reminded him of the times when Nordic warriors had to take on important roles, always knowing when to step back to preserve their vitality. Norse mythology is filled with stories where Nordic wisdom teaches the importance of knowing when to withdraw as a way to ensure a more balanced life. Thus, living so close can create a cycle where one feels responsible for more than they should, undermining their quality of life. Even when we are physically near, emotional balance must be maintained. Don Manuel's idea of living close to his children can be likened to the Valkyries, who observed from a distance as warriors fought on the battlefield, never interfering directly in every choice. A good example of how to apply this concept in real life is to ensure that, even while with their children, seniors still have their own individual activities and pleasures, such as cultivating a hobby, exercising, or even learning something new. This preserves their mental strength and identity. However, it's important to understand that maintaining independence doesn't mean abandoning family ties. On the contrary, by cultivating Viking inner strength, as Don Manuel would later learn, ancestral wisdom shows that healthy distance can strengthen those ties. The secret of the Vikings for lasting family relationships was maintaining a balance between closeness and individual space, a concept that he would begin to explore on his journey toward mental resilience and the discovery of true freedom in old age. Initially, Don Manuel felt excited about living with his daughter. After all, he thought being by her side would allow him to enjoy more family life. However, Viking philosophy teaches us that by sacrificing our independence, we lose something essential, our inner strength. The Nordic warriors understood that freedom was vital for survival, and without it, there is no true mental resilience. Just as Don Manuel gradually took on more and more caregiving responsibilities, the Vikings knew that carrying extra burdens could weaken their minds and spirits. Norse wisdom warns us about the danger of losing control over our own lives. Don Manuel, without realizing it, was drowning in family demands, which prevented him from focusing on himself. The ancient Nordic warriors understood that Stoic self-control was one of the most important pillars for longevity, and losing that independence could come at a high cost. The Viking philosophy always highlighted the importance of maintaining a personal routine, something that Don Manuel would ultimately neglect, leading to an emotional and physical imbalance. Amid this reality, Don Manuel began to notice that his time for personal activities was diminishing, just like many other seniors in similar situations. This reminds us of the Nordic tales about warriors who, when removed from their missions, lost their strength and vitality. Don Manuel started to realize that by giving up his freedom, he was also distancing himself from what brought him joy and purpose. And so, by neglecting his independence, he was moving away from his own essence. The Stoic power of the Vikings lies in understanding that to be truly strong, one must know when to retreat and focus on oneself. Don Manuel could have avoided this loss of independence if he had maintained a daily self-care routine, something anyone can apply in their own life. A morning walk, time set aside for hobbies, or even moments of meditation are simple ways to keep the mind balanced. These small Nordic rituals of self-control make all the difference in maintaining mental strength. In the end, Don Manuel began to feel the weight of this new reality, where the lack of time for himself started to impact his emotional health. Norse mythology teaches us that the Nordic warriors never completely abandoned their internal battles, and Don Manuel would realize in due time that his battle for independence was just beginning. This feeling of having lost something so valuable would pave the way for a new understanding of himself and the importance of regaining his autonomy. As time went on, Don Manuel found himself increasingly taking on the role of caregiver for his grandchildren. What started as a small helping hand turned into an overwhelming responsibility. This phenomenon, known as the grandparent slavery syndrome, is a trap many seniors face, just like Don Manuel. The wisdom of the Nordic warriors teaches us that to preserve mental resilience, it is crucial to know when to step back. In Viking culture, caring for the tribe was important, but never at the cost of one's own inner strength. The Nordic warriors would never allow their family obligations to undermine their emotional balance. Don Manuel, on the other hand, was suffering from physical and mental exhaustion that began to affect his health and well-being. Viking philosophy teaches that Stoic self-control is essential for facing challenges, and Don Manuel had lost this ability as he became overwhelmed by family demands. Just as warriors needed rest between battles, he needed time for himself to recharge and regain his strength. As fatigue set in, Don Manuel began to experience symptoms of depression and anxiety, common among those who take on the role of overburdened grandparents. Norse mythology is filled with examples of how a lack of balance between giving and receiving can destroy even the strongest warriors. Similarly, Don Manuel was consumed by exhaustion. A practical way to avoid this situation is to set clear boundaries with his children, which can be achieved through open and empathetic conversations. Defining specific times to care for his grandchildren and reserving moments just for himself is an effective strategy. The Stoic power of the Vikings lay in their ability to say no when necessary without feeling guilty. Don Manuel, on the other hand, felt obligated to always be available for his family, neglecting his own needs. This reminds us that, just as the Norse warriors understood the necessity of maintaining their physical and mental strength to protect the tribe, today's grandparents must do the same. Cultivating personal hobbies, like reading or engaging in crafts, can be a simple yet powerful way to reconnect with oneself. From this point onward, Don Manuel began to realize that, although he loved his grandchildren, he was sacrificing his health for them. Viking Stoicism teaches that we must be strong for ourselves before we can be available for others. Gradually, he started to understand the importance of regaining control over his own life, leading him to make difficult but necessary decisions for his well-being. This realization would pave the way for recovering his identity and autonomy. Over time, Don Manuel recognized that the loss of his autonomy was costing him much more than he had imagined. He felt as though his identity was fading away. Viking ancestral wisdom always valued individual autonomy, especially in old age, as a pillar of mental strength. The Norse warriors knew that losing control over their own lives would leave them vulnerable, both physically and emotionally. Like many other elderly individuals, Don Manuel began to feel the impact of this loss on his self-esteem and well-being, a reflection seen in every aspect of his life. The Stoic self-control, so prevalent in Viking culture, is crucial for maintaining a strong and resilient mind. Unbeknownst to him, Don Manuel was living an identity crisis. He had taken on so many family responsibilities that he had somehow forgotten who he was. The Norse warriors never allowed the demands of the tribe to rob them of their inner strength. Thus, he began to feel an increasing void, a lack of purpose that only worsened over time. Norse mythology always emphasized that true strength lies in balancing external demands with the cultivation of one's own identity. Regaining autonomy is not merely about reclaiming physical freedom, but also rediscovering what truly makes us happy. Don Manuel began to see that without his autonomy, his self-esteem was in ruins. The Norse warriors maintained daily rituals to ensure that their inner strength remained intact, and Don Manuel could apply this in his life through simple activities, such as setting aside time for himself every day. Even if only for a few minutes, this space is crucial for re-establishing a connection with one's essence. Viking philosophy teaches that autonomy is the key to maintaining mental resilience. The loss of autonomy made Don Manuel feel powerless, a sentiment shared by many elderly individuals. To reverse this scenario, it is essential to regain small forms of control over one's life. A practical example would be to set personal goals, such as learning something new or revisiting old hobbies. Just as the Norse warriors dedicated themselves to practicing their skills, Don Manuel could use this strategy to rebuild his confidence and find new purposes. His journey to reclaim his autonomy was just beginning, but he already felt the need for change. Hidden Viking wisdom suggests that the first step towards any transformation is recognizing the problem. Don Manuel finally began to see that his happiness depended on regaining his space and freedom. This discovery would be pivotal for his future decision to take back control of his life, and the next step would lead him to make significant changes in pursuit of his lost autonomy. With the help of his friend Joaquin, Don Manuel began to walk the path back to reclaiming his identity. The Norse warriors, ever resilient, also believed in the importance of reconnecting with what defined them as individuals. After dedicating so much time to the needs of others, Don Manuel decided it was time to focus on himself again. Inspired by this ancestral wisdom, he started to revisit activities he loved, such as gardening, which provided him with a renewed sense of purpose. Gardening was more than just a simple activity for Don Manuel. It became a metaphor for cultivating his own life. In Viking culture, warriors always reserved time to practice their skills and rituals, ensuring they were prepared for future challenges. Don Manuel followed this example, dedicating daily time to himself, which restored balance to his life. This is an example many can follow. Reserving a few daily minutes for a pleasurable activity can be the first step toward reconnecting with one's identity. Don Manuel's movement toward independence included a significant decision to move into his own apartment. This courageous choice helped him redefine his life and restore his stoic self-control. Just as the Norse warriors chose their paths and faced challenges head-on, Don Manuel understood that to recover, he needed to be in his own space, away from family pressures. This new environment gave him the opportunity to focus on his physical and emotional well-being, essential for anyone seeking to reconnect with themselves. Over time, Don Manuel began to recognize the benefits of his choices. His physical health improved, and his mind became clearer, a direct result of regaining control over his own life. Norse wisdom always teaches that true mental strength comes from within, and Don Manuel was experiencing this firsthand. He realized that small steps, like finding hobbies and having a personal space, were fundamental in reclaiming his lost identity, a lesson many people can learn to apply in their own lives. Don Manuel's journey was still far from over, but the first signs of recovery of his identity were already evident. His story illustrates that Just like the Norse warriors who faced external and internal battles with Viking courage, Don Manuel was now ready to confront the challenges ahead, stronger and more prepared than ever. Certainly, here's the translated text in American English, maintaining the original context and tone. However, there was still much to be done to ensure that this new phase of his life would be truly transformative, something he would learn over time and through the difficult decisions he still needed to make. Interestingly, as Don Manuel gained his independence, he found that his relationships with his children and grandchildren grew stronger. The physical distance brought a new perspective, something the Nordic warriors understood well. In Viking ancestral wisdom, the strongest bonds are formed when there is respect for space and individuality. Don Manuel realized that by creating his own routine and living in his own space, he was able to be more emotionally present for his family, free from the burdens of everyday life. The balance that the Vikings always sought in their lives was now reflected in Don Manuel's relationship with his family tribe. The Nordic warriors valued stoic self-control and understood that by protecting their minds and bodies, they were better positioned to protect others. Don Manuel applied this same principle in his life. By finding his own space, he felt lighter and more capable of enjoying the time he spent with his family. This also reduced the conflicts and tensions that had previously arisen from excessive cohabitation. Many people can apply this teaching in their lives by understanding that by taking care of themselves, they become more capable of caring for others in a healthier and more balanced way. Nordic wisdom teaches us that true power lies not only in physical strength, but in mental strength. Don Manuel recognized that by caring for his own mind, he was strengthening the emotional bonds with his family. Norse mythology, with its tales of warriors and their complex relationships with their tribes, teaches us that maintaining a certain emotional distance can be the key to strengthening connections. Don Manuel and his daughter began to understand each other better because he now had more time and energy to devote to quality moments with her and his grandchildren. The secret of the Nordic warriors has always been the balance between duty and rest, something Don Manuel learned to apply in his family relationships. By creating his own routine, he was able to establish healthy boundaries with his children, leading to a more harmonious coexistence. He began to realize that by preserving his own inner strength, mental resilience, and autonomy, he could be a better father and grandfather. Thus, his relationships with his children and grandchildren began to transform, becoming deeper and more meaningful. With this new dynamic, Don Manuel understood that his journey was far from over. Now, with a more balanced relationship with his family, he felt ready to face new challenges, always keeping Viking wisdom in mind. The mental resilience and inner strength he had regained were now the foundations for a healthier and happier life. However, he knew that the true secret to the success of any relationship lay in the constant pursuit of balance and the maintenance of his own independence. Now that you know the secrets that the Stoic Vikings never told you, it's time to apply this knowledge in your own life. Think about this. Do you really want to spend your old age sacrificing your freedom and autonomy? Or would you prefer to build a life where mental strength and resilience are your greatest allies? Remember, the Nordic warriors always knew that to take good care of others, you must first take care of yourself. So, what will you do today to take back control of your life? How can you implement small changes that will restore your power over your own choices? Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning of the journey. Want to continue strengthening your mind? Be sure to watch the video that's appearing on the final screen, the hidden Viking technique that can shield your mind against any adversity. In it, you'll discover how to use this ancient technique to face any challenge with courage and wisdom,